Right, hello everyone. I know it's chucking it down out there, so shame about that, but I hope you all managed to keep dry and get a bit of coffee inside you and tea as well. So, we have an emerging manifesto for the North taking shape, but we're going to have to hear, and should hear, what the current government has to say about driving prosperity in this part of this great country. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, Michael Gove.
Thank you so much, Clive, and can I say a particular thank you to Tracy Brabin as well for inviting me to address the Convention of the North. It's the third time I've had the opportunity to address the Convention of the North, first in Liverpool, then in Manchester, and now here in these magnificent surroundings in Leeds. And today, I believe, is the day that the North truly takes back control. Today, at this convention, together, we inaugurate the biggest transfer of power and resources to the North in living memory. We all know in this room that power is best exercised by those closest to the people that they represent. We all know that the divisions in our society, economic, social, educational, are best bridged by empowering local leaders. And we know that it is only right that it should be communities in the North which determine the future of the places where they live and the towns and the cities that they love. And that is why today, at this Convention of the North, together we are bringing about a power surge for the North. We've already agreed deals with the mayors of the West Midlands and Greater Manchester to give them greater power over skills, transport and housing. So the opportunity to get on, access to the best jobs, and a safe, warm, decent home of your own are now within the reach of many more. And today, we're extending these same opportunities to West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, and the Liverpool City region. In technical terms, that means level 4 devolution. In real terms, it means more money and a bigger capacity to make a difference for Tracy Brabin, Oliver Coppard, and Steve Rotherham. Now, I know, of course I know, that Tracy, Oliver, and Steve are Labour politicians. And in a few months' time, we'll be arguing passionately about different visions for the country as a whole. But much more importantly to me, Tracy, Oliver, and Steve are directly accountable local politicians with a mandate and a mission and a responsibility to deliver economic growth and improved opportunities for people in Leeds, Bradford, Wakefield, Castleford, Huddersfield, Dewsbury, Sheffield, Rotherham, Barnsley, Doncaster, Liverpool, Knowsley, Runcorn, Southport, and the Wirral. And what's important to me, and I know to them, is delivering for people in those cities and towns. So by giving local politicians more power, with greater accountability, local people can then enjoy better jobs, higher wages, quicker journeys to work, more opportunities to learn, more attractive homes, and an enhanced environment around them. The theology is devolution. The reality is improved lives for all. And I'm also today clear that we want to take forward devolution to many more areas across the country, with the North leading the way. I'll be continuing to support the extended North East Mayoral Combined Authority, grow from strength to strength. And I know the Chancellor will be saying more about how we support the North East in days to come. And I also want to conclude a level 4 deal with the great Ben Houchen, the one-man northern powerhouse who's done so much to bring investment and hope to the Tees Valley. And as well as the level 3 deal that we have with York and North Yorkshire, we're also now implementing level 3 deals with Hull and East Yorkshire, and also with Greater Lincolnshire. There are further level 3 deals moving forward in Norfolk and Suffolk, and of course a level 3 deal has been secured for the East Midlands, and a level 2 deal for Lancashire. We'll also shortly be announcing more level 2 devolution deals covering other parts of England. So we now have 19 devolution deals, either established or in implementation, covering over 33 million people. This is the most profound change to the way that England has been governed in generations. It's a vote of confidence in local democracy, and in particular, a vote of confidence in northern leadership. We together are levelling up the North by giving power to its people. But that's very far from all that we're doing together to demonstrate our commitment to the north of England and our shared determination to level up. We're working in partnership with civic leaders to irrigate the soil for the private sector investment, which is vital for the enduring economic growth that the north needs, which we all need. Here in Leeds, we're working with the council and the mayoral combined authority to lever an investment for new housing and new enterprises in Mabgate, in the Innovation Arc, in Holbeck, West End Riverside, East Side and Hunslet Riverside, and of course, on the iconic South Bank. We're working closely with the Royal Armouries here, and we're working to secure and to bring into public ownership a site for British Library North at Temple Works. And I was also excited recently to meet with the Poet Laureate, Yorkshire's own Simon Armitage, to hear his fantastic plans for the UK's only National Poetry Centre to be situated here in Leeds. And I and my department will be doing everything we can to support that endeavour. And we're also working to ensure that the existing strengths of the universities in Leeds, the life sciences sector, the financial services sector, the tech sector, and of course the cultural jewels of Opera North, Leeds Art Gallery, and Channel 4 can all be reinforced. And today, I can go further. I'm delighted to be able to announce that we've agreed with West Yorkshire the final plans for their new investment zone, focused in particular on health tech. It will direct £50 million of additional investment to accelerate capital projects here in Leeds and in Bradford and Huddersfield. And a further £25 million of the funding will be used to give local people the skills that they need to take advantage of over 7,000 new high-quality jobs being created in the region, all because of the investment zone. And to ensure that this Leeds renaissance can benefit the greatest number of people in West Yorkshire and beyond, we're also investing £2.5 billion in a mass transit system which will link Leeds with Bradford, Halifax, Huddersfield, and Wakefield. The heart of West Yorkshire will be stronger, and the arteries which connect Leeds to these proud towns will be enhanced. I don't believe any government for decades has shown this level of commitment to Leeds, to West Yorkshire, and indeed to the north as a whole. And it is central to our shared moral mission to make opportunity more equal for everyone. Because levelling up at its heart is about public and private investment, partnership between central and local government, empowering local people to determine their own future, and using all the resources of communities which have been overlooked and undervalued in the past, their educational, cultural, and entrepreneurial talents, to shape economic growth and to deliver greater social justice. And that's why in our Levelling Up White Paper, we set the direction for future central government spending in areas such as tech and culture, the two principal motors of growth in the decades ahead. And we're committed, therefore, to increasing spending on research and development from both public and private sectors, faster outside the Golden Triangle of the South East and in the North. It's also why we're increasing Arts Council spending in the coming years outside of London and the South East and in the North. And the Network North transport spending, which was announced earlier this week, sees millions more committed to improving transport links within and between the communities of the North and Midlands. Now, redirecting the spending is crucial to levelling up, but so is making sure that those resources are in the hands of the communities that they're intended to benefit. So that's why Network North funding goes to councils, while Arts Council spending will support grassroots cultural organisations in the North, and the enhanced R&D spend will be delivered through the North's great universities. And we also know that across the North, different communities have very specific needs, which we can only effectively support by working in partnership with people on the ground to identify obstacles and opportunities. So, for example, in Liverpool, we know that the immense potential of the city, and indeed the wider region, has been held back by an insufficiently coherent approach towards urban regeneration. There are iconic new investments in Liverpool, and of course handsome historic buildings, but they sit alongside stalled sites and areas of untapped potential. And that's why the vision that was set out in the Liverpool Strategic Futures Advisory Panel report is so important. And we will back it with £31 million of new money, I can announce today, for regeneration projects which trace an arc from the Knowledge Quarter to Bramley Moor Docks on the waterfront. In Sheffield, we know that that city's proud industrial heritage, augmented, of course, by the innovation that we see at South Yorkshire's Advanced Manufacturing Centre also requires additional investment to reap benefits into the future. That's why we're investing £67 million to create over 1,330 new homes and 4,000 square metres of commercial space in the heart of the city. That's on top of the £12 million that we're already investing through the Brownfield Housing Fund. And by working with Sheffield Council and Oliver Coppard, we hope to unlock a further £500 million of private sector investment. We're also investing more in Blackpool, a great town which has had to adjust to the changing nature of the visitor economy. And it's been held back by historically terribly poor housing. So we're devoting another £90 million to transform some of the most deprived parts of the town centre to power Blackpool's revival. And I'm also committed personally to ramping our support in Barrow, where the commitment that we have with British Aerospace to develop and build the next generation of nuclear submarines will generate thousands of new, highly skilled, high-paying jobs for decades to come. But with those jobs must come new housing, improved transport links for Barrow, and even better educational institutions. And that's the mission to which my department is committed. In each of these communities, with diverse needs, but all optimistic about the future, we've worked together to identify where the additional investment that we're committing to the north can make the biggest difference. And that's been the philosophy driving our levelling up partnerships. New initiatives from my department, which lead to deep relationships between the department and local leaders in Blackpool, Blyth, Grimsby, Middlesbrough, Redcar and Cleveland, and now, most recently, in Blackburn. Together, we identify the barriers to growth, and then we deliver bespoke investments which build on the community's existing strengths. So in Blackburn, our announcement today means £8 million for the arts and community venue King George's Hall, £1.5 million to redevelop the Cotton Exchange, and £1.5 million to revive Tony's Empress Ballroom, one of the very few original Northern Soul dance floors in the country. Sadly, I won't be out on the floor for any forthcoming all-nighters. But as levelling up funding goes, do I love it? Indeed I do. The principles governing our levelling up partnerships, and indeed the £4.8 billion worth of investment delivered through the Levelling Up Fund, are also behind our long-term plan for towns. We know that for towns to succeed, our great cities need to grow. But we also know that it's the specific needs of towns, their individual strengths, their particular challenges, that need to be addressed if they're to benefit from the growth that our cities are powering. So that we know in the towns around Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, Sheffield and Newcastle, and other great cities, some towns are doing better than others. Some are better connected than others. Some have higher productivity than others. But all have potential. And in the 55 towns that we've identified for investment, we're making £20 million per town available. And we're ensuring that it's a locally constituted, grassroots-led town board which will draw up the bespoke plan for how that investment meets specific local needs. So in the Yorkshire towns with which we're currently working, Barnsley, Castleford, Dewsbury, Doncaster, Keighley, Rotherham and Scarborough, it will be local people who will be empowered and local priorities which will be supported. Under the leadership of my friend Adam Hawksby, who's committed to driving down power and opportunities much closer to these intimate communities, we will be building on the success of this programme in weeks to come. I want to end on a personal note. And I want to end soon, because the last time I spoke at this convention, I had so much to say about levelling up that Evan Davis had to cut me off. And I can see Clive eyeing his watch carefully. The reason why I'm so committed to levelling up is because I came into politics to tackle inequality, to give a stronger voice to those who'd been cut out of the elite conversation, to uphold the principle that everyone is of equal worth and no one should be held back because of their background, their birthplace, or their beliefs. Tackling entrenched inequalities, overcoming historic injustices, giving space and opportunities to those who've been overlooked and undervalued, it takes time. It requires money, yes, but it also requires us to reach across old political divides, to see the other person's perspective, and to trust in the spirit of public service that animates so many of those who enter public life. In the election months ahead, there'll be arguments, of course, about priorities, policies, and people. I'll be defending a record in government of which I'm immensely proud, and outlining why I believe that the big questions we face are best resolved with Conservative answers. But at a time when the risks of division and polarization are heightened, I want us all here at this Convention of the North to recall and celebrate what we all have in common, to feel optimistic and proud about every community in our country, and resolve to ensure that we make the pursuit of greater opportunity for all a fight in which we are all in this room on the same side. Thank you. Thank you.
Secretary of State, thank you very much indeed for that. I'm sure everyone here in the room will be heartened by much of what you had to say. And I really want to involve our delegates and everyone here in the hall. So if you've got questions or something you want to say, we do have roving microphones on the floor. It's actually quite difficult to see because of the lights here in my eyes, but if you do have questions, raise your hand and I can bring you in. And I've also got a lot of questions here on Slido as well, which is great. But I've got a couple of things to begin with. First of all, Secretary of State, you talk about inaugurating the biggest transfer of power to the North in living memory. You talk about the fact that we know it's about empowering local communities. That success will come. The theology is devolution, the reality is improved lives. This is a power surge for the North. Extending more local powers, devolution 4, level 4 devolution to more areas, more money to make a difference. Why is all this happening in the dying throes of a parliament?
Well, I think it's the culmination of work that began earlier in this parliament. So, when George Osborne was Chancellor, he inaugurated the idea of the Northern Powerhouse. He was the person who believed that extending the powers of mayors over mayoral combined authorities was necessary to redistribute power and resources more equitably across the country. And he was, in the face of quite a lot of scepticism from people within my party, in particular said that we really need to create mayoral combined authorities in Greater Manchester, in West Midlands, and Tees Valley, and elsewhere. And I think that the scepticism that existed at that time, mainly I think in my party, but also in other parts of Whitehall and other parts of other parties, I think that scepticism has been met by success. So I made the point in my remarks that we're giving more power to Tracy, to Oliver, and to Steve, for all Labour politicians. One of the reasons we can do that is because Conservative politicians like Andy Street and Ben Houchen have made a success of the mayoral model. But so have Labour politicians, including Andy Burnham. And while I'll disagree with Andy about a variety of things, no one can deny the fact that he's shown that you can use the power of that mayoral role to really drive change. That power having been demonstrated as a force for good, we're now in a position, I think, to roll out more of the work that we're doing. I also said that I think that levelling up takes time and it requires partnership. We've been talking about the north-south divide in this country for 100 years at least. So, of course, there will be a desire and a level of ambition in this room, greater even than that which I articulated.
Sure.
But I just wanted people to appreciate
Sure.
that we're on this journey together.
Absolutely. I mean, you've made a point of talking about giving money to Labour politicians. I mean, the fact is you're not giving it to Labour politicians, you're giving it to the people.
Exactly.
So that's a very crucial thing. And I think a lot of people would say, it just takes for ages. It just takes forever. And again, my question is, why is this coming in the dying throes of a parliament? Cynics might suggest. And you know what I'm going to say?
It's all about the election. Yeah. Of course, politicians think about elections, but one of the great things about the Convention of the North is that I think it succeeded in generating a broad cross-party consensus on the importance of devolution, the importance of closing regional divides, the importance of addressing economic inequality. So my friend Boris Johnson, I don't know if he's going to be the most popular person in this room if I name drop, but nevertheless, Boris put levelling up at the heart of what the Conservative government has been doing since 2019. And only recently, earlier this week, I was on a panel with Ed Balls, and there was a broad shared consensus about what we need to do. So I'm confident the Conservatives will win the next election, but I'm also confident that whatever the composition of Parliament in years to come, this is an agenda that will carry on. And as I say, it has its roots and its origin, of course, in work that's been done preceding 2010, but I think it really had additional momentum, as I say, because of what George Osborne inaugurated and what has been carried on by successive Conservative ministers.
Yes, inaugurated George Osborne, the Northern Powerhouse, 2010, 2011, 2012. We're still talking about increasing investment and stuff being done many, many years later.
Yeah.
And that frustration is clear.
Yeah. And I think, again, it would be facile not to acknowledge that economic growth across the country, across the whole United Kingdom, has been affected by all of the factors of which we're aware, the COVID pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and so on. I'm saying that not to make excuses. Of course we need to work even harder and show a greater level of ambition. But I think everyone recognizes that in the past few years, every advanced Western economy has been operating against a particularly difficult economic landscape.
Sure, but finally from me, the idea that a happy North is a happy Britain, economic growth and regeneration here raises all the boats across the country. Is there a sense that that is fully understood at Whitehall?
I believe now, absolutely.
Now?
Yes. I think that.
Why is it taking so long?
Well, I think that we've had to make this argument. I think that there's been a tendency in some government departments, I won't name them.
Why?
What?
Name them.
I won't name them, but I think the Treasury can speak for itself. But I think there's been a tendency in some government departments to think that you reinforce existing success,
right,
rather than thinking, hold on a moment. If we want this country really to succeed, one of the big challenges we have is that productivity is lower in the North, and the gap between productivity, in broad terms, I mean, there are obviously outstanding exceptions to that, but for decades now, average productivity, technical MGVA, has been significantly lower in the North and in the Midlands than in the Southeast. And if productivity, and it can be because the skills are there, the talent is there, the potential is there, if productivity in the North were the same as in the Southeast, then the UK would be Europe's largest economy. So even if you're just looking at it purely from a cold numbers analysis, the sort of analysis that in some government departments might exist, even if you look at it from that analysis, this is preeminently the right thing to do.
So are you, levelling up secretary, banging the table? Are you in the Treasury? Are you saying, I'm sorry, guys, we've got to get this together.
I think
sort this out.
The point that I would make is that that was an historic view. It has changed now. So I talked about the theology of devolution. Everyone's got religion on levelling up across Whitehall now. So the first thing is that I mentioned George earlier. He was, of course, the Chancellor who drove this change. And Jeremy now is the person who has enabled me to make some of the announcements that I've made today, and who will be saying more about levelling up when he delivers the budget next week. So I think the honest answer to your question about why is it taking so long is that there was an inertia and a skepticism in the past. Ministers with whom I've worked have been changing that, but as ever, we need to make sure that the argument continues to be made, because you can sometimes have, faced with what is a very, very big challenge, you can sometimes have people who lose heart or express skepticism. So even if you've convinced people, even if people do have that religion, you do need to carry on evangelizing as well.
Sure. So we will be hearing more from Jeremy Hunt.
Yes.
Next week in the final budget of the current Parliament before the election.
Well, I don't know if it's the final budget, but it will certainly be the next budget.
Right. On to Slido. I've got a question here from Sarah Swindley. How do we ensure we level up our rural economies, vital to food security, net zero, and the environment?
Well, the critical thing, I think, there is that we shouldn't, and I certainly wouldn't, try to have a hierarchy of areas within the North and Midlands that need levelling up. We need to recognise that the success of our cities powers the success of our towns, and the success of both strengthens our rural economy. Specifically there, I think there are three things I would mention. Under Steve Barclay, we are getting the new forms of rural payments, the environmental land management contracts, right, so that they pay farmers for the public goods that they provide, the environmental and other benefits that they provide. That is the right way of using government money to support. The second thing is that the Prime Minister at the NFU conference recently talked about the importance of a food security guarantee and a food security audit. The third thing that we need to do is to make sure that we provide enhanced export opportunities for our food. We have the highest environmental and animal welfare standards anywhere in the world, and that means that there can be a hallmark of quality that our farmers can use and our ministers can use in providing opportunities for the export of British food abroad. There are other things that rural communities need: improved broadband, transport connectivity, including buses. I could say more about those, but for me, the backbone of the rural economy is agriculture, and the three things that I've mentioned, I think, show that we are backing British farming and backing the British countryside.
Okay. Another question here from Anonymous. When will we get meaningful fiscal devolution for our regions?
Well, again, this is one of the biggest and most transformative changes. We've had, in the creation of the Trailblazers in West Midlands and Greater Manchester, greater control for local mayors over spending through the creation of a single pot rather than the ring fences and the particular streams and rivers of funding. It's all there in one big lake drawn. And that approach will be extended to West Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, Liverpool City region, and others in due course. But in terms of tax-raising powers, one of the things that the Trailblazer areas are also doing is having a longer period of business rates retention. So they get more business in, they get a broader tax base, and a bigger tax take. But we need to go further. And I said in a conversation that I had with the Yorkshire Post that we need to look at the basis of council tax overall, and we need to see how we can move further in terms of fiscal devolution. But there is one challenge in particular, which is that areas that have historically been overlooked and undervalued in the past, by definition, have a lower tax base to start with. In the north, far more of the homes which are here are in council tax bands A, B, and C. Business rates generate far more at the moment in the south than they do in the north. So if we're thinking about fiscal devolution, we also still need to have transfers in order to ensure that we don't have a move towards fiscal devolution that means that the north doesn't yet have the tax base required in order to meet the needs of the north's population.
Okay. I'm not going to follow up on too much because I want to get as many questions in as possible. So another anonymous here on Slido. What about areas, because you talked about more devolution deals locally in the region. What about areas that don't have devolution deals? Are they to be left behind?
No, I don't believe so. And one of the things that we do is that we've got a suite of interventions. So devolution deals are critical. But it's also the case that in areas that haven't yet had devolution deals, we've had, through the Levelling Up Fund, through Levelling Up partnerships, through the long-term plan for towns, ways of making sure that we can cooperate with local communities. But there are areas that I would like to see which haven't gone those full steps, where I would like to see things go further. And I think, for example, there is scope in Cumbria to move towards a greater degree of devolution, perhaps in due course a mayoral combined authority. But the approach that we take is we do everything possible to encourage and to incentivize local leaders to embrace devolution, but in those areas where there's perhaps some initial reluctance, that's fine. We're not coercing. That's why I stressed that these deals were agreed. Just one point about the East Midlands and historic point. In a few months' time, there'll be a mayoral combined authority election in the East Midlands. When the West Midlands had a mayoral combined authority set up, local authorities in the East Midlands sort of stood aside. They've seen how successful the mayoral model has been in the West Midlands. They've seen how successful Andy Street has been as mayor. Now they want a piece of that action. So I think that the ongoing success of the mayoral model will drive a demand for further devolution in those areas that have held back so far.
So you've got to have a mayor.
I don't think you absolutely do, but my own preference, and the point I make is that it's for local areas to decide what the right model is for them. I think the mayoral model, a fixed term, clear accountability, you secure a mandate, economic growth and improved social justice are at the heart of what you are asked to deliver, and then the community judges you at the end of 4 months. So again, I think one example of that is Ben Houchen. I mentioned him earlier. I know that Ben has his critics. I am a huge fan of what he's done. But in a way, it doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what people in Darlington and Stockton and Middlesbrough and Redcar think. And after his first term, his first 4 years, he had a massively increased majority because people felt the model was working and he was working for them.
All right, okay. Another question here. The new funding announced today sounds good in principle, but isn't it a relative drop in the ocean compared to the major cuts in central funding to councils?
Well, I do recognise that local government is facing all sorts of challenges, and that's why just last month we found the Chancellor found another £600 million to help upper tier local authorities to deal with, in particular, with the challenges of children and adult social care. And I could say a lot more about why there are factors in our society that are placing increasing pressure on local authorities to deal with those. My own view is that local government is absolutely vital, and a disproportionate amount of local government's finances and attention at the moment has to be devoted to those statutory services like adult and children's social care. And that does constrain, to an extent, the capacity of local government to play that vital role in placemaking, in providing the additional leadership that areas need in order to improve. I completely understand and get it, and that's why I think we need to think hard about future reform of local government financing in order to help to address those challenges. But I also think that the funding that we've announced today, the 4.8 billion that I mentioned for levelling up fund projects over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, that can only help. But there's an ongoing conversation that we need to have with local government. Final thing that I would say is if councils do get into particular difficulties, we provide exceptional financial support, as we have done for Bradford. And again, there are some challenges with some local authorities that have got into difficulty financially because of poor management, but now is not the moment and this is not the place to go into that, but we do have conversations, constructive conversations about how we can help.
And no influence in the problems that some councils have as a result of cuts from central funding?
Again,
in your opinion?
I defer on this to the admirably independent chair of our new local government scrutiny body, Oflog, Amias Morse, Lord Morse. As chair of the National Audit Office, leader of the National Audit Office, he was pitiless in criticising central government when it failed. And the point that he's made is that, of course, local government faces significant pressures, but those councils so far that have issued Section 114 notices that have, essentially said that they're in dire financial straits, he says that whatever else, in every single one of those local authorities, there have been weaknesses of leadership and governance. But again, what we've sought to do is to make sure that we recognise that, and then we work with local communities to help. And I also think that it's only right, particularly here and in this convention, to acknowledge that while there are real pressures on local government spending, there are also great examples of local leadership. Sometimes that is, doing amazing things in admittedly tough circumstances, but we do need to celebrate those successes as well as acknowledging the pressures that people are under.
Okay. Here's an interesting question. This is from Eleanor Pegner.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Nice one, Eleanor. It says here, and this is your question, Eleanor. Do you have any plans to support food bank trusts in the north through part of the money from the pulled HS2 investment?
There are two separate things here. So on HS2 investment, That investment was dedicated to transport, and it stays for transport. So the Network North announcement that the Prime Minister, Mark Harper, made earlier this week was about the way in which we're reallocating that investment, and it's going specifically to local authorities. And it's also the case that through city regional sustainable transport settlements, crusts, we've given significant sums to mayoral combined authorities to spend on transport. On the whole HS2 debate, my own view is that if it's an either-or choice, and for some people it shouldn't be, but if it is an either-or choice, it is better to spend that money improving connectivity within and between communities in the north, rather than additional capacity north-south. But I recognise it's a live debate and good people take different positions on it. On the whole question of food bank usage, I would broaden it out. It concerns me, obviously, that there's been an increase in food bank usage. I think that there are a variety of different things that we need to do collectively as a society, and central government needs to do, to think about both the problem of persistent poverty and also, in particular, some of the food challenges and food poverty challenges that we face. And the two things that I would say are my colleague Mel Stride is incredibly focused on this, and I also think some of the thinking that has been done by the Times Healthcare Commission and by Henry Dimbleby, the author of the National Food Strategy, has helpfully informed that debate. And for anyone who is passionate about improvement in both of those areas, I would commend both Rachel Sylvester's work and Henry Dimbleby's work as ways of helping us to inform where we should go next.
I like this question, actually. What do you think is the single greatest asset here in the north that it has to offer the country compared to other areas?
Passion. I think that I don't like, as I mentioned earlier, setting one area against another, but I do think we need to be honest about the ways in which the wiring of government has not served the communities in the north in the past. And I think that the striking thing is that whenever I have the opportunity to talk to people, not just in local government, but in business and in education and in civil society and charities across the north of England, the passion and enthusiasm for the work they do, the determination to make a difference for the better, that always strikes me. You can sometimes, I think, see in the broader national media a reflection of an air of exasperation and cynicism about the problems that we face as a country and as a world. But the reality I find on the ground is that people are engaged and enthusiastic. So, for example, when I, a few months ago, was visiting Blyth, what I was really struck by was the passion of families there, of mums there, for dealing with the antisocial behaviour problems, but also working together to improve housing. So I think that is the most powerful thing. That's grassroots enthusiasm for making a real difference in communities that people love.
Secretary of State, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, that brings to a close the first half of the conference today. We're going to see you back here in about an hour, at about 1:30, I think. And then we will be hearing from Labour's Angela Rayner. So, enjoy your lunch and see you shortly.